In this video, we'll be looking at how to save your document and export it for use online. So when we're saving our documents, we can come up to the File menu and down to our Save As. And from within the Save As window, we can obviously navigate to where we want to save this file. And down the bottom, we have our format options. Now, if I click on the drop down there, we can see we've got a number of different formats. If we're working with a document that has a lot of layers and we want to basically keep that document as editable as possible in Photoshop, we can just save it as a Photoshop file, so a .psd file format. And when we save things as a Photoshop file, it means we can always go back in and edit it, change it if we need to. All our layers are basically preserved. We do have some other formats though that we do commonly save as. We have the Jpeg format. Now with that format, it does compress the file size, so you get a much smaller file size, and it does flatten all of your layers. So if you have worked with a number of adjustments, you'll end up actually flattening those all onto one layer with the Jpeg. Jpeg doesn't preserve transparency either, so you're always going to end up with a white rectangle in your background, or at least a rectangle around your image. Another common format is the Png or the Png File format, which is used for online work. With our online work, if we want to have a transparent background behind a logo or something like that, the Png format is good for that sort of thing. We also have the Tiff format, another common format often used within the print world. We don't use Tiff for digital or online work. It's usually within print-based documents. So these are probably some of the most common formats. So we have the Photoshop for print and also the Tiff for print. And then we have our PNG and we also have our JPEG for more digital and web-based work. But when we want to save things for web, we often want to compress our files so that they're a smaller file size, and we want to be able to control the width and height and that sort of thing. So I'll come out of this window by cancelling, and when we're ready to save for web, we come up to the File menu and we can come down to Export. From the export window, we can come down to this Save for Web Legacy. You can also export as, but I prefer the Save for Web export just because it gives you a preview of the file that you're about to export. So we open up this Save for Web window and we basically have these tabs running across the top. We've got our original, which shows us how the original file looks. Then we have the optimized version, so this is once it has been compressed. And then we can compare the original and the compressed file. Got the original up the top and our compressed down the bottom. We can also look at them 4-up, which I like to look at the 4-up preview mode because we can see our original file and we can compare 3 other versions of that file. So if I click on the top right corner here, this is my JPEG version, and we can see on the right hand side I've got a number of things I can change within this preset. So this one is currently set as a JPEG. We can see that I can change the different file types from up there. And within the JPEG format, I can also change the quality. So if I want a maximum compression, that's going to give me a much larger file size, but it will also give me a very clear and sharp image. So looking at the size at the moment, it's 2.8 megabytes in size, which is a decent sized image. If I was concerned about that, if I wanted to make sure that it was uploading okay online, I'd probably need to reduce that file size down. So if I come down to the lower left corner here and select that one, I get the blue border running around the outside, and we have a look. This one's set up as a JPEG medium, and it's only coming in at about a megabyte. And then I can come across to the lower right corner here, and this JPEG's set to the low, and that's only coming in at 315K, so that's a much smaller file size. I can also change the physical dimensions of the size as well. I do have my image size options here. So if I really wanted to bring this down in size, if it was being uploaded to a website, I could, for example, reduce the overall width in pixels. So I could take it down to about 2000 pixels in width. And we can see that it's also changed the height there because we want to make sure they are kept in proportions. This little link here will ensure that they do remain in proportion. Great, so by reducing that down to a width of 2000 pixels, we've only got an image size now of 73K, which is a much smaller file size. And so for the purpose of putting it on a website, that's probably about the right size I would need, 2000 pixels in width, and at 73K, that's pretty good. So if you're happy with the overall look of that, you can come down and you can hit the Save button here. If you wanted to view any other options, I'll come back up to this top right corner here. I could view the image as a GIF file format, and it doesn't really change it too much because it is quite a high resolution image. Sometimes you'll notice with the GIF format that your gradients and that kind of thing will look a little bit stepped and a little bit grainy. And then we can also view it as the PNG8 file format as well, which hasn't changed it too much either. PNG8 is a really good one if you do have gradients. It's also good if you've also got things like transparencies in the background. Both PNG and GIF will preserve the transparency, whereas JPEG won't. Okay, so if I come back down to this one here, my smaller JPEG, and I'll just hit the save button there, and then I can just save it into this window here. Great, so that's just a quick look at how we can both save an image as a working file, so saving it as a layered PSD file, and then also saving it out as a flattened JPEG, or exporting it for web in the PNG, the GIF, or the JPEG format. Hope you found this recap training video series helpful, and I look forward to hearing about your progress in Adobe Photoshop.